I'm not a trained climate scientist, but in 2005 I did start Rossendale Climate Change Group, and for 5 or 6 years, most months, we had a lecture from a scientist, so we did find out quite a lot about it. I got interested, I read everything I could lay my hands on. I even wrote 2 books about climate myself, so I like to think I'm not entirely ignorant. I'd like to share with you what the scientists taught us, because I think there's a great deal of misunderstanding and misinterpretation in this field. I'd like to do it in 5 videos, and this first one is called The Tipping Point. Everybody's heard of the greenhouse effect, but it's widely misunderstood. It doesn't mean that we're pumping so much carbon into the atmosphere. It's forming a kind of blanket around the Earth, and it's letting the heat in but not letting it out, somewhat as the glass does in a greenhouse. That's not at all true. The amount of carbon we put into the atmosphere is tiny, it's minuscule, it's almost nothing compared with nature, the vast emissions of nature, because everything that dies emits carbon. But nature balances these huge emissions with cooling mechanisms. These are largely 3. Trees that store carbon, ocean algae that turn carbon into oxygen, and the polar ice caps that reflect, or at least used to reflect, 1/3 of the sun's heat back into space. What we're doing with our tiny emissions is disabling the cooling mechanisms. And it's not just that once that they're disabled, they stop working. No, they turn turtle and start actually adding to the climate problem. Every tree that catches fire releases carbon. Ocean algae that are dying from carbon poisoning in the sea poison the sea even more, so even more algae die. Ice that turns to water emits heat, because water emits heat. It's this feedback mechanism that scientists are so concerned about. What they're telling us is that if we drive up the global temperature, the average global temperature, to over 2 degrees, and now they're saying it's probably nearer 1.5, but if we do that, then we will have disabled the cooling mechanisms so much that they really cease to work. They're too enfeebled, at which point all that stored carbon will suddenly roar into the atmosphere. And we're very close to that point now. They say at present rate of emissions, we've only got 12 years to stop that happening. And once it does happen, what it means is that the global warming we've been experiencing up to now, which is certainly quite alarming, but nevertheless manageable, that will be dwarfed by what begins to happen then, because then we'll be on our way to runaway, unstoppable, enormous climate change, which will have catastrophic effects for the Earth and everything on it, including ourselves. So what we have to do above all things is to stop those emissions reaching 2 degrees in the next few years. An extraordinary thought, really, that in the whole history of humanity, never has such a choice to be made until now. We've got the biggest problem that humanity has ever faced, and it's on our watch. But it's not all bad news. We could do it, we still have time, as long as we have the resolution to do it and the determination to do it. We could still not only halt climate change, we can create a much better, greener, more peaceful world for the future of our children. Let's do it.